Raid Shadow Legends is frankly a very unforgiving game when it comes to your resource management. So if you are not a huge spender, you really need to be careful on how you use certain resources. And one of the main areas where people make mistakes to use resources improperly is skills. Skill tomes in this game are very hard to get. Just to put it simply, you're not going to get very many, especially not early game. Early game, you'll get like an influx at the beginning through campaign and stuff, and then there will be a very long dry period before you can get your clan boss up to a point where you can actually get these reliably. But basically, there are quite a few things that go into skilling up heroes that people don't really understand early on, including myself. This is one of my old accounts that I played on many years ago, and I made quite a few mistakes on this. So I want to show you guys how to skill up, common things to avoid, and just give you guys kind of an overall guide on this piece of leveling. If you're looking to have one of the strongest possible starts, make sure to click the link in the description to get a free legendary Bambus 4-leaf and one of the best epics in the game to gore as you level up. Now, to make it happen, here are all the steps you need to follow. Number 1, make sure you are logged out of Plarium Play on PC, or you just don't have it installed at all. The next step, you just gotta go into the description, click the link, and register with a brand new email. Once you launch Raid and complete the tutorial, go to the mail, and there sitting will be your free legendary, and the epic will come soon after once you hit level 15. Starts like this in gachas are unheard of. Click my link right now and get the start that you deserve. So to start off immediately, I'm going to show you guys an example of something that I did properly at some point. Originally, I didn't do it this way, but when I started watching more YouTube videos, I understood and I started to do things properly. Here we have Geomancer. Geomancer, for those of you who don't know, is one of the best epics in the game. He's better than quite a few legendaries in this game. He might not be the best epic, but he is very close to it. And you can see right here that despite me having the books, I never skilled him up to full. And that's because the main thing that you want to know when you're deciding whether or not you're going to skill someone is you got to figure out the skill that you need. And for this guy, for Geomancer, his whole kit basically revolves around his A3, which is what this ability is. It fully depletes the target's turn meter, fills his turn meter by the amount the target loses, and then has a 75% chance of placing HP burn and weaken on the target for 3 turns, 3-turn cooldown when max skilled. This thing requires quite a few skills. Just to put it simply, it takes a lot. But once you get to it, once you get to the final thing and you lower the cooldown tends to be the most important thing to skill for. You don't really need the other two things. Here, sure, it's cooldown -1, but it removes all buffs, which is solid. Steal all buffs instead if there's HP burn, and then reduces the cooldown of quicksand grasp if he kills someone. Quicksand grasp being the thing that we want. But when you're using Geomancer, a lot of the time it's for boss content, and you're not really going to be able to reduce your cooldown here. And also, you don't really need the minus cooldown very much, or the damage, because most of his damage comes from his HP burn. So with Geomancer specifically, because I know that the A2 and the A1 are not that important, I mean here, extra buff and debuff chance, it's decreased accuracy, it's already like an okay chance. I don't need to skill this up. A lot of what happens with skilling is it's all about just figuring out what skills you want to get to and having the self-control not to go further. It's a very important thing to use or to know. Another example of this is Duchess. So going into Duchess, skilling Duchess, and I got very lucky skilling Duchess. Duchess, for those of you who don't know, is also one of the strongest units in the game. She used to be debatably the best, but now she's been kind of power crept a little bit. But basically, I went into this knowing I want these cooldown skills or cooldown skill ups for the 2 most important skills in her kit. -1 cooldown and -1 cooldown 2 different times. Very important for using her effectively because these are integral to her kit. They're super important. But the A1 I don't need because getting a little bit of extra shield or a little bit more damage, she doesn't do damage. She doesn't need this damage. So I'm just going to avoid skilling this up. And right here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 skill ups. Legendary skill ups are not easy to get. So because I saved 5, those 5 were able to go into someone just frankly more important, like Helicat, who's really important. I got very unlucky with these skills and I had to skill up this. But because I avoided skilling up Duchess to full, I had those skill ups for Helicath and I didn't have to wait to skill them up. This is just a kind of optimization that you really have to think about while going through with skill ups. Now, there are a couple things that go even further on this point. I'm emphasizing this the most because it is the most important one. Let's go over to Stultus. Now, I know Stultus is not maxed. I haven't played on this account in forever, but basically, even if I had the legendary skill ups, which I don't currently, I still wouldn't skill him. And that's because I know going into this with Stultus that despite him being a very good hero, that I needed for a couple things. The main thing I needed him for was stuff like Dragon. And for Dragon, you only need his passive really. And his passive bounces poisoned back onto the other target. It's really, really good. But his other abilities, while they are solid, they do damage, you know, they do other stuff. For what I am using him for, I don't need the skill ups. So realistically, there's no harm in not skilling anyone. There's a lot of heroes in this game you will use with no skills, like Drexthar, who is an amazing free legendary that you can get through Tag Team Arena Shop, I'm pretty sure. He doesn't need skills because his passive is the main thing he uses for his damage. And although extra chance to put out the bus or the debuff is really good, you don't need it at all for what you use him for. He's going to get hit so often that he's going to place this HP burn almost all the time. So realistically, you don't need to skill up. And that's just saving so many books. It's just all about optimizing your book usage. Now, this does obviously extend to other things, but one kind of mistake I see a couple people use or go through is using your skill books for lower rarity than you should. These things all have different rarities to get. They're harder to get as you go higher. Mythical books are near impossible to get. They're usually valued about $12 each. Very, very expensive, but the legendary ones are a little bit less. And then the epic ones are very easy to get. You know, rare ones, I have 32 and I don't have anyone to use them on because I get too many, right? What you want to keep in mind is never, ever, 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 and I cannot emphasize this enough, never, ever use a higher skill book on a lower rarity champion, ever. Never do it. So legendary books on an epic champion, mythic books on a legendary, never do it ever, okay? Now, the final thing I will show is actually how to skill up. And for those of you who made it this far in the video, this is actually really important when you're skilling up. Here, I'm going to go to, let's say, Archmage Helmet, who's solid. I don't use him because this account's been AFK for a while, but he's pretty good. And I have 6 skill ups. Let's say I'm trying to get his A3 up to max. His A3 requires 2 skill ups to get to the point where I want it. And despite the A2 being pretty solid, let's just say, whether or not this is true, that I do not want to skill this up and I do not want to skill the A1 up either. This is 7 and 4, so 11 books that I don't want to use. So despite me having 6 skill ups over here, instead of putting the full 6 to try to guarantee or at least increase the chances of putting the skill books into the A3, what you should do instead is look at what you want to skill the most and put in that exact amount required to get it to max or to get it to the point you want. Put that many books in and no more than that. Because for some reason, skilling in this game, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that skilling in this game, even if it's, let's say, 5 books required to max something, if you start booking it and they start going in that one specific area, it's pretty likely for the rest of them to go that area, which is a little odd, but that's how it seems to me. So you want to just kind of put in the amount necessary. And going back to not wasting your skill ups, you want to try to maximize it as much as possible. So any wasted is not good. If I were to put 3 in and my first 2 go into the A3 and then one of them go into something else, that's a whole skill book wasted. You don't want to do that. So when you're skilling him, you're going to put in the amount that you need. Here, it did not go where we wanted, but that's okay because we still have more. We put in another 2 and it goes in the wrong place. As you can see, these are always going in the same place, which is really weird. So we're just going to hope that it goes in the 3rd area, and it didn't, unfortunately. So we will have to use more skill ups in the future to max out the thing that we want. This is something that will commonly happen, but it will also commonly give you what you want, and you will be able to save these skill ups. It is such a big optimization in your progression, in your late game, in your early game, everything. This is important information to know for any part of the game that you are in. It's really, 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 really important. And I cannot overstate it. Skill ups are valuable. Heroes are valuable. So you have to be smart. You have to know what you want to use the hero for. Is it really urgent for me to skill these up? What is the skill that I want to skill up? When do I know when to stop? These are all things that you have to ask yourself while you're skilling your champions. And realistically, I would say the final thing to leave you guys off with is when you are thinking of skilling someone, only skill someone that you know you will use immediately. On this account, I made a lot of mistakes because I did not watch that much YouTube for these tips when I started. I skill Syl of the Drakes, who is really, really good. She is an amazing hero, but I don't use her very often on this account. I basically never use her, despite her being really good. And I heard she was really good, and I was like, oh, of course I'll skill her. She's amazing. Immediately when I got her. But then she proceeded to do nothing for me. So you really, 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 really have to try to have the self-control to wait for when you need the skill ups. Still, the way I use her, if I were to go to champions, ignore the missing piece of gear. I use her with a set called Relentless. This gives her extra turns. And when you get an extra turn, it reduces the cooldown of some of your abilities. So the way I use her, I could have very easily used her without any skill ups. And I really regret skilling her because this is 2, 5, 4, this is 11 skill ups that I could have put into someone else. And now that I have, other heroes that I might want to skill up, I don't currently, but just hypothetically, if I were to pull a hero that I wanted to skill up more, I can't. So that's the final thing I'll leave off with you guys is skill people that you need now. Don't skill people that you think you'll need later. Because what if later on you pull another hero that's even better and then you don't end up using the first hero? Or maybe you don't realize that you're not going to use the hero, but you skill them anyways. Then that's waste. It's waste. That's just how it is. Like the main thing you want to focus on is clan boss. And if you want to skill a clan boss unit, but you don't have them because you skilled the Syl of the Drakes to get you slightly higher in factions immediately, but you're losing out long term. That's just something to keep in mind. It's going to depend on your account, going to depend on your heroes. I recommend watching YouTube videos by other creators on, what to do with what hero. But at the end of the day, just be careful. And I hope this video was helpful. It is a little bit of a rant because I've gone through this mistake so many times before. You guys have no idea. And it kind of temporarily bricked my account for a bit because I was lacking in so many areas because I didn't have the skill ups. So I'm just trying to stop you guys from making the same mistake. But yeah, that's kind of everything I wanted to talk about. So thank you guys so much for watching. I would really appreciate it if you guys liked the video and subscribed. Obviously completely up to you, but it would help the channel out a ton. And that's it for me. Destin signing out.